Look, we start this hour with the big news that a senior source has told GB News that any plans that were reported earlier today to send asylum seekers to Ascension Island in the South Atlantic for processing are, quote, pie in the sky and are unachievable. The source went on to tell GB News that the plans were already being considered and dismissed by Boris Johnson and former Home Secretary Priti Patel as completely unworkable. We then had Jacob Rees-Mogg on this show about half an hour ago, who said he was involved with these plans initially and that they calculated it would cost around £1 million per migrant sent to Ascension Island. I suppose the argument against that would be, yes, it's a massive outlay and cost, but how much money has Rwanda cost us so far? How much money are we spending on hotels, etc., as it is? And barges like the Bibi Stockholm? And would Ascension Island not be a proper deterrent, one that would actually stop the boats? But it comes as the Bibi Stockholm barge in Portland has welcomed its first group of migrants on board. Let's go to Portland now and speak with our Home and Security editor, Mark White. Mark, first things first, Ascension Island, it was floated. It's a very, very popular idea, certainly with a lot of GB News viewers who are saying, hey, if there's a will, there's a way. But the government apparently saying there's just no will or way.
Yeah, there's no doubt if you want to look tough, it's the kind of policy that would chime with a lot of people that would feel that, yes, it would be the ultimate deterrent. But it was looked at by Boris Johnson and Priti Patel, Jacob Rees-Mogg and others a few years ago when this idea was first mooted. And a senior source has told me that they really did the figures on it. It was just not achievable. It was so cost prohibitive. The fact that you have this island 4,000 miles away that really lacks any kind of infrastructure, which you would have to build from scratch down there. And then, of course, you would have to supply at a very, again, on a very sort of expensive footing regularly, probably by air or by ship, because it's so far away from anything. And then there was the military. The military just didn't want to be involved because the very thought of flying hundreds of angry young men who don't want to be sent 4,000 miles away and would potentially be less than compliant on military aircraft was something they just didn't want to even contemplate. So they were out. They were not going to participate in this particular plan. And really quite quickly, I think, Boris Johnson, Priti Patel and others came to the conclusion that it just was not workable at all. And that it was unachievable. So talk of it now is very interesting. This was clearly briefed out because it wasn't just one but two newspapers who had the same story, even though today the government is saying that it's still committed to Rwanda and it's not talking about Ascension at this stage. But I think we stand actually the chance of being distracted a bit by this, because I think the real story here is just how precarious the government's immigration stop the boats plan is, Patrick, because we have the Rwanda policy, which is going nowhere at the moment. It's still mired in this final legal challenge to the Supreme Court that could go easily one way or the other. And without a safe third country, this whole illegal immigration bill that was just passed recently in the Commons is just going to crumble, because it relies on declaring those who cross in small boats as illegal immigrants, denying them the opportunity to claim asylum, and then returning them to their own country if it's safe to do so. We know in the majority of cases it's actually not safe to return them to their own countries, so you're relying on a third safe country. And if you don't have that third country, such as Rwanda, you have a policy that's just going to crumble and be completely ineffectual.
Yeah, Mark, thank you very, very much for that. It's Mark White, who's our Home and Security editor. I think it's worth noting that with the Ascension Island plan, if that's off the table completely, and there is no way that we're going to end up sending people to a third country, if we can't even send them to our own territories, by the way, the only other way, in my view, to stop the boats is to actually physically stop the boats. And over the weekend, there was talks that the UK are in talks now with Germany. So forget the French. We're giving them a load of money to do absolutely naff all. in talks with Germany to actually stop the manufacturing and transportation of these small boats through Europe and ultimately to places like Calais and then, of course, on to us. That is something that I, for the life of me, have not been able to understand why we haven't been able to do so far. How can it be that thousands, if not tens of thousands, of this specific type of boat are able to make their way to the coastline and then, of course, be slammed full of illegal migrants before they head towards England? Surely the full might of the Europeans' security services and our own can stop those boats. Maybe that is now happening, and maybe that is the way to get around the fact that we seem unable in this country to offer any kind of significant deterrence to people crossing the Channel. But our South West of England reporter Jeff Moody is in Portland, where, yes, another community is facing the brunt now of the fact that they are going to be used as essentially an illegal migrant dumping ground. Jeff, what's going on where you are?
Thank you, Patrick. Well, we've seen 4 buses come in today to various amounts of trumpeting from the media and from the Stand Up to Racism demonstration, who are there handing out welcome packs and waving and showing welcome banners to them. The other side in the debate, the No to the Barge campaign, chose to stay away today. And to observe from afar. Kate Robson, you're from the No to the Barge campaign. Why aren't you guys down here protesting? This is the day that we've been building up to for weeks and months, isn't it?
Well, as you know, Jeff, our grievance isn't actually with the asylum seekers that will be on the barge. Our anger is aimed really at the Home Office and Portland Port, who have enabled this. So we know this government are free-falling straight off a cliff very soon, but Portland Port is private, owned by Langham Industries. They are putting profit over people, so they haven't consulted with the community. They are thrusting 500 men onto this barge, and what we now hear as well is that this will never be filled to capacity. This vessel is not safe for 500 men. If you look at the fire exits, they are very small and the gangways are very high and narrow. Portland has just one road on and one road off. The government are absolutely disgusting in ignoring the Fire Brigade Union, experts in the field of providing fire advice and safety experience internationally, and they're calling it a political move because they are aligned to Labour, which is why they're calling this vessel dangerous. They need to come down here and look at this themselves. If you imagine 500 men in an emergency situation trying to pile out of one gangway, you have one road off. Essentially, if that gets blocked, and Portland Beach Road is blocked frequently, if you have a simultaneous incident in Weymouth and then on the barge, it could end in tragedy. And this is why it's been completely ill thought through. But what we have to remember here, Portland Port is private. London said no, Liverpool said no, Hull said no, Essex said no. Portland Port said yes, and it's all about profit to them without a single thought for anyone else.
We have tried to speak to Portland Port and Langham Industries, who won't speak to us, but you say that they've all said no, but the asylum seekers themselves are saying no, aren't they? We were hearing on the second bus that was due in today, there were supposed to be 9 of them on the bus. 8 of them refused to get on the bus to come here. What do you make of that?
I don't blame them. You know, they're settled in hotels. This is, again, the government's complete disregard for humanity. I mean, it's absolute disgrace all round. They're treating asylum seekers with contempt as well as the community. I mean, they have railroaded Portland and Weymouth. Portland has just 13,500 residents. You're thrusting 500 men, potentially vulnerable men, into a community that actually can't support themselves. Our services are very limited. Our port of access for healthcare is very limited. It is just wrong on every single level. But we will not stop fighting this. This is fundamentally wrong and immoral.
OK, Kate Robson, thank you very much indeed. Fundamentally wrong and immoral. You've heard it there first. Back to you.
To be fair, Jeff, it's not the first time someone's used those words to describe me. But, Jeff, can I just ask you to emphasise the numbers of people that arrived on these coaches? Because there's a lot of noise going round at the moment, right? We've had the Ascension Island thing, which was basically one giant smoke screen. That doesn't look like it's going to work. There's massive controversy over whether or not the Bibby Stockholm is actually a fire risk. Are they just saying that it's a fire risk because the Fire Brigades Union are affiliated to the Labour Party? Is it actually a fire risk? Then there was talk about legal letters going in from groups like Care for Calais on behalf of these migrants saying, you can't possibly send us on this barge. We've suffered trauma at sea. We've got disabilities. We were tortured in our own country. It comes hot off the back of some groups of solicitors, of course, being accused of taking cash in hand to make up this kind of stuff. But let's just deal with the facts, which is, how many people did you see with your own eyes getting off these buses and getting onto a barge, Jeff?
Very difficult to say, Patrick, because the buses are blacked out windows. But the first bus that went past, there was not a single person on the side of the road that I was on, so I couldn't see a single person in it. The second bus, we heard that there was only one person on it. The third bus, I couldn't see a single soul. The fourth bus, I did see 2 or 3. They were filming out of the window at us. So I can't swear by this because I've not seen them, but I would say there's probably less than 10 people in there today. With regards to the fire issues, of course, there's no fire issue with having 10 people on that barge, none at all. The only issue comes in when you have 500 and the barge is not designed for 500. But at the moment, you can have 10, 20, you could have 100 in there, and that's what the barge is built for. It's built for purpose. It'll be fit for purpose. That's no problem. It's when you start doubling it and tripling it and quadrupling it, that's when you have the fire problems. But yes, I would be surprised if there's more than 10 in there.
All right, look, Jeff, thank you very, very much. It's Jeff Moody there, who's doing a cracking job for us and has done now for a period of months, actually, South West of England reporter in Portland. I wonder how many of you at home now, or if you're listening on your radios or what you're doing, have ever seen so much fuss made about something that is going to make so little difference when it comes to the Bibby Stockholm barge. It's a matter of principle, isn't it? It's a point that it's going to make a huge difference to the people in the local area, and it will make a relatively significant difference to the taxpayer's pocket, because we're going to continue to see the rollout of these barges. But in terms of actually solving the migrant crisis, it is going to do absolutely nothing. The one thing I think it has served to highlight is the complete and utter lunacy of the refugees welcome, let's stop the far right lot, who are out in force all the time. The way that they justify people having their local areas completely decimated and turned into dumping grounds for illegal migrants is to say, if you're opposed to this, you must be a member of the far right. Well, what happened today was the actual Portland residents decided to step to one side so that everyone who wanted to welcome the asylum seekers could welcome them. So it wasn't what's quoted often as a hostile environment. I mean, that's not very far right, is it? That's not very aggressive, that's not very racist. And it is almost like the vast majority of people in this country just don't want their local area to change forever because our government can't stop the boats. For what it's worth, the Labour Party has now come out and said that they will use the barges. So no new oil and gas, but we will get a bit new oil and gas under the Labour Party. The NHS is a sacred cow, but they're not opposed to using the private sector for that now under the Labour Party. The barges are terrible and we can't use them, but they will use them under the Labour Party. It's all getting a little bit weird. It's almost like we're being run by the same people, and those people are all idiots, isn't it? But anyway, loads more on this story on our website, gbnews.com. It's the fastest-growing national news site in the country. I've got the best analysis, big opinion, and the latest breaking news.